get everyone in to joining us tonight for our mid-season check-in with the UConn women's basketball beat writers. I know it's been a while, a lull in some games the past couple weeks here, so I know everyone's excited to get on and talk some UConn women's basketball and look back in the first half and see what we've got ahead for us here in the second half. So again, I'm Jared Cutler of the Connecticut Scoreboard Podcast and excited to once again bring the UConn women's basketball beat writers back. So everyone, welcome back to the panel. It's fun to have one mid-season. We haven't done this yet. So we'll get started. Obviously, the first thing on everyone's mind is the COVID situation, and when's the next game going to be? I'll throw it out there. Whoever wants to take the bait and jump on it first. Prediction on when the first game for this team might be.
Sunday? If we're feeling optimistic.
All right. Well, I think we'll take Sunday, given how long of a wait it's been, and it looks like the men might be on track for Saturday. Given the COVID outbreaks with the two teams, Charlotte, I know you cover both. How have you seen the parallels here? Are they kind of on the same path in terms of the men's schedule and what they've been doing and getting back to playing, or how has it differed?
I think the biggest difference is depth versus the men and the women. The women are in a bit more precarious position just because they were already limited injury-wise. Mm-hmm. So that kind of really threatens. You have to have 7 scholarship players available. So the men have a little bit more room to work with, whereas with the women, they were playing with 8 players, I believe, had 8 available. So depending upon injury status of Nika Mule and Izzy Fudd and obviously Aubrey Griffin, that really kind of throws things for a loop. So that's a big difference with both teams.
All right, so enough COVID talk, and now we can get to the basketball, which is what I think everyone wants. We got to throw the update in there, though, at the beginning. So we could go around here. Let's kind of break up this first half of the season into 2 parts, and we could kind of call it pre-Paige injury and post-Paige injury. And we could go around it. And Maggie, you could start too, especially with this being your first year on the beat. What have been your general thoughts on the team and their play up to this point? And again, kind of looking at through the lens of pre and post Paige injury here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting season for sure, both pre and post Paige injury. I was telling my coworker, I think our first sign this was going to be a weird season was that basket did not work on first night, and that's just bizarre. But I think pre-Paige injury, it seemed like they had all the right pieces, and it seemed like people were gelling, re-gelling from what they had last year. They were introducing AZ, they were introducing Dorka, and then obviously I think they just needed time to get their feet under them and get kind of organized with all these new pieces. And then Paige goes down, and then AZ goes down, and Nika goes down. And then since then, it's kind of been a constant trying to juggle all this and juggle these fluid pieces coming in and out, going out. When are they going to come back? Who's going to step up? I think they really needed something to happen after the holiday break. And I don't think shutdown was what they were needing to happen.
Daniel, you've been around the team for a while. You've seen the pretty much ups and some limited downs for this team over the past handful of years. Take us through from your perspective, your thoughts on the team.
Yeah, there's just been something off about them since really the first regular season game, I'd say. That's when I started to feel like something was a little off, and I'm not really sure what it is. I'm not sure how to put my finger on it. But I think a big part of it is the schedule's just been so broken. They open the season against Arkansas on a Sunday, and then they don't play again until Saturday. And then they play 3 games in a row. And then after the Battle for Atlantis tournament, they don't play for 10 days. And then obviously Paige goes out there. And Gino says very frequently that at a certain point, practice isn't going to help you get much better. You need to play games. You need to get that experience. And they really haven't had any substantial stretch this season where they're playing games at a normal cadence. It's either been just all games at once or a long stretch without them. So I think that's also a big part of the reason why it seemed pretty disjointed, a little different than usual UConn teams that we've seen in the past, especially because you think about it, they brought really every single player back except Anna Makarat from last year. They add in some really interesting pieces in Dorky Uhas, AZ Fudd, Caroline Ducharme, and Amari DeBerry. So you think it's just going to be integrating those guys in, but it still kind of feels like even the players that have been here for a couple of years are adjusting and getting their feet under them. So yeah, it's been weird from the start. I think it's just gotten progressively more weird with not just the Paige injury, but then all the other injuries and then the COVID outbreak. And now we don't even know when they're going to play again. So it's just been very weird and the vibes are off, and not necessarily in a bad way, just off. And there's nothing that I can quite nail down as to why that is.
I think it's a really interesting point you brought up on the schedule, and one I hadn't necessarily thought about, of just kind of the ons and offs throughout the season, now throwing the pause, and it's been even thrown even more out of whack. Charlotte, your thoughts here on the team so far through this halfway point?
I can jump off of Daniel's point, actually. Just the makeup of the team, I think, was we expected this group, which had brought back so many players, to really kind of be clicking from the start, and that makes sense. But they're still a really young team, which I think is something that we kind of forget, because, I mean, Paige is only a sophomore, but she had this amazing freshman season where she did not play like a sophomore. But so many of their other players are young players that we kind of forget about that a little bit. And obviously the standards are very different at UConn, and you come in and can play a lot of minutes like Paige has, or tentatively like Easy could have. So I think there's just that like adjustment more, even though they have so many returning players, just kind of taking that into consideration, especially as Daniel pointed out with the like starting and stopping was difficult. So I'm curious what happens when they start playing all these games consistently, what that's going to look like.
Alexa, back just in time for your spot here in the rotation here. Just your thoughts here on the team so far to this point.
Sorry, everyone. My internet just went out, and so I'm on my phone. I honestly, the biggest thing that stands out to me is that this team has barely played. So I don't really know what to make of them, honestly. I mean, they've played 9 games, and that's in the 25th percentile for D1 teams across the country. And I just don't know how much you can really gain from that, because also 3 of them, they've been like severely injured. So I can see one trajectory where they get everyone back healthy and they put things together and they're back in the Final Four, like with no sweat. And I can see another trajectory where things kind of like go off the rails. Not really. I don't think it's going to end up being that bad, but they pick up, they really struggle in non-conference play, and they end up having like 5 or 6 losses or something. But I just don't know. And I think that's the frustrating part, is that we also don't know what to expect, because they would have had 3 games under their belt if COVID hadn't, been an issue. So we would have probably seen a little bit, signs of progress, or kind of just more information in general about what this team is. But honestly, I thought their Louisville game was a huge step in the right direction. I mean, I went back and I watched that 4th quarter today for a story, and they really could have won that game. Or, Gino says like they should have won the game. So we would have been talking about them a lot differently if, those last 5 minutes went differently. But I just want them to play more, and then I think we'll be able to see really what they're made of.
Alexa, and I'll kind of use that Louisville game as a segue here. I wanted to talk about what's impressed everyone this year in this team, and what's been a little bit disappointing. And we could start with the disappointing side, because I think when you look at that Louisville game, and you've seen it as a trend the past couple of years, and in particular a couple times this year in games where the team has really struggled in the 4th quarter. What do you attribute some of those struggles to? And if there's anything else that sticks out to you as kind of a disappointing factor of this team so far this year, feel free to share it there too.
I think the biggest thing is that I think most people expected the seniors in particular to be further along, because if you really take out Caroline's performance in the Louisville game, and you just look at what the seniors have done in each of the 3 losses, it's not good. It's not what seniors really should be, like where they should be, but also specifically UConn seniors. I think the good news is that they have time to turn that around. I want to see Kristen Williams play like she did at the end of her junior season. And so there's like, we've seen her do that, and we've seen Avina be more consistent or have those flashes of what they want her to be every night. I think the biggest issue is like, how do they come out with that in the big moments, or even just really on a day-to-day basis? So that would be my biggest maybe kind of disappointment, but I'm also saving room for them to, turn things around, because there's still plenty of time. Wait, am I supposed to answer like the positive thing too?
Yeah. We're not all negative here.
Yeah. Positives. I think Dorka and Caroline in particular have really come on strong going into this, extended break that they've had. And I don't know if people didn't really know what to expect from those two because there's so much hype around AZ in terms of the newcomers. So I think that's huge. I think they're going to be just massive contributors down the stretch. I think that's probably the biggest plus I've seen from this team. And then, Paige was really good when she was healthy for the most part. So, and AZ showed we saw her what she could be that one USF game. So, flashes, but consistency is the key for this team.
Charlotte, we'll get your input now on both the positives and negatives so far this year.
I think negative, probably building off Alexa, the offensive production. And you see that especially in the fourth quarter and in those times when they've struggled. And a lot of that does come from expectation-wise. I kind of expected Kristen Williams to come in and be a consistent scorer just throughout the entire game and really carry off of last year. So that's been disappointing to see. But I'm sure they've had the time to kind of work on things and you could kind of see some improvements. And then let's see, positive. I think it's really, really important that Caroline has played so well just the last couple of games. Obviously, she is a freshman, so there's that you never know what's going to happen the next game mentality. But I think that's a really good sign that she can do that and that she has kind of broke out since the Notre Dame game, just playing really strong and what that means for this team, especially when we look at what's happened depth-wise just over the course of, a month, how things change so quickly. The fact that she's been able to come up so clutch is really a good sign for UConn.
Daniel, we'll go to you here, and I'll tee up a little bit too, given what someone just put in the chat here in talking about Liv, because if anyone who watched the preseason panel knows, your big hot take was Liv going to be a standout this year, could land herself on an All-American team. So I'll tee up if you want to go in that direction in terms of any positives, but again, open to what you've got here.
Yeah, sure. I've been driving the Olivia Nelson-Ododa bus all summer long. I'm multitasking too because I would also like to take credit for starting to drive the Caroline Ducharme bus. But yeah, just talking about Liv, I think the biggest thing with her is that in the past, in UConn's losses, specifically looking at the two last year, against Arkansas, she was actively killing the team with turnovers, with fouls, with just easy to fix mental mistakes. Against Baylor, she couldn't even hit the rim. A lot of the same problems. So in the past, when she's been bad, she's been actively harming the team. And this season, when she's been bad, I guess, she's still been okay. It's not like she's it's not like her being out there is harmful to the team. And pretty much for the most part, when she's out there, UConn's playing a lot better, even if she's not necessarily having a great game. And we've also started to see flashes of some greatness from her. And, maybe it would have been better if this happened last year, but the first half that she had against South Carolina was easily the best basketball that she's ever played at UConn. She was great defensively. She was doing just enough on the offensive end. She was rebounding. She was blocking some shots. She was great, and she couldn't keep that up for the entire game. But the way I've been looking at Olivia Nelson-Ododa's performance this year is it just seems like she's slowly taking steps every single game. It's not like she has this one great 20-point, 10-rebound game against a Butler, and then she's completely invisible for the next 3 games. She's making an impact every single night, even if it's not necessarily the double-double every night, or even if she's not blocking every shot in sight, or even if she's not scoring a ton. But her role on this team is really important. UConn is a lot better when she's on the floor. And I think part of the perception with Liv that hurts her is she's not Aaliyah Boston. She's not going to be able to get into the post, run over the 3 defenders that are guarding her, and get a bucket. And if she misses it, rebound over everyone to get it. That's just not who she is as a player. And Aaliyah Boston's one of the best players in the country. Olivia Nelson-Ododa doesn't have to be one of the best players in the country. She doesn't have to be an All-American, but she's just been a really, really solid forward for this team, and that's really all they need her to be.
All right, I like it. Keep driving the Liv bus throughout the year here. Maggie, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, kind of to echo what everyone kind of said about just the upperclassmen, I think that would go to my disappointment list too. Just because this is a lot of their last year in college basketball, whether they choose to stay an extra year or not. I think the majority, if not all, of the UConn upperclassmen, the seniors are probably we'll go into the draft. And so I was expecting more of just putting it all out there, showing more growth, showing more just control during the game and leadership as well. And I think, especially with Paige being out and then Nika and AZ also going out, you expected them to kind of really step up consistently, and it has not been like that. Avina and Dorka both had good games, that UCLA game, but that's not every game since Paige has gone out. And so I think that's been a disappointment with that. And then with Kristen not, being a consistent scorer as well, that also doesn't help the leadership. That kind of brings it down a little bit. In terms of a pleasant surprise, I'd also have to go with Caroline as well, just because when UConn had no Paige, no AZ, and Nika, they were down to 3 guards, and we knew at some point she was gonna possibly get that starting spot as well. And she got it the second game after Paige went out, the UCLA game. And I think from that point on, including the Louisville game, she's just shown that, she's able to play a full game. She is able to score and just really make a presence for herself that we kind of knew she had before coming to UConn, but really showing that she can do that on a college stage.
As we, kind of go through the roster here a little bit, I feel like everyone would have looked at me crazy if I asked this question in the preseason of who would this team's MVP be. I mean, I think everyone would have answered Paige. But at this halfway point in the season, given her absence, and maybe she still is the MVP of this team for, how they've looked with and without her. But if you had to pick, a halfway point MVP here, Maggie, who are you picking? And we could go around on this one too.
I think from the first 9 games, I think I would pick Caroline just because she has shown that big growth, and she has shown that she can step up, that she can fill in a need when they need her to be. And even when Paige comes back, you'd like to say she can continue that as well.
Daniel, you go and Liv, or should we move on? No.
Yeah, it's tough because, I think it obviously is Paige just by the nature of her absence, showing what a different team UConn is. And I think I do have to go with Liv just because you look at the rest of the roster, and Kristen hasn't been up to par for the entire season, but UConn doesn't win the UCLA game without Avina, and Avina's been really good in some other games, but then she hasn't shown up, especially in the 2 losses that they've had without Paige, to Georgia Tech and Louisville. So I have a hard time picking her. And yeah, Caroline's been great the last couple of games, but she was more or less a garbage time player before that Notre Dame game. And Dorka's been great the last couple of games, but she wasn't doing anything before that. And Aaliyah Edwards has been off for the entire season. And you can't pick one of the injured players because they've been injured and haven't been out there that much. So I think it's almost that Liv is the default MVP just because I think she's been the most consistent player, which is really weird to say considering what we've seen from Olivia Nelson-Odota's first 3 years. And not that that's been a very high bar for this team either, but the ups and downs haven't been as great with Liv as they've been with really every other player on the roster. And she has had ups and downs, just not to the same degree as everyone else.
All right, we'll go to Alexa now for her pick.
I'm actually trying to pull up her hoop stats. This actually begs a very interesting question of who would lead the team in win shares. And it looks like in win shares per 40, Paige is still the winner, or still the best. And then, hold on. Because I honestly do not know how to answer this question. I don't think there is one. I refuse to give an answer. Besides,
you're gonna have to give 2 hot takes at the end if you don't give it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm scrolling down the Her Hoop stats page for win shares per 40, and hold on. Sorry, I'm just incapable. Paige, and then Amari DeBerry next at 0.25. That's because it's per 40. Should I throw out Amari DeBerry? No, I won't. Yeah, I don't know. In all seriousness, I'll just take kind of something that Daniel said. I feel like when Avina plays at her best, this team is so much better. And she was also the only one who actually scored in the 4th quarter in 2 of their losses, which is better than no one. So I'm going to just give a shout out to Avina. I don't know if I would name her the MVP so far, but I do think she's could be considered. She and Kristen to me are the 2 most important players with Paige out. And we've seen her step up more than Kristen so far. So I don't know.
Charlotte, well, you get to have the last say.
I refuse to answer. I don't think it's fair. I mean, this team is just so different. And it's not just Paige. I mean, obviously, Paige is such a driving force. But then you lose Nika, who is such a go-getter on the defensive end. And you lose someone like Azzi, who can really add some offensive spark. And even Aubrey. I think Aubrey's a huge loss, which is just so frustrating to see her not be able to play because she can add such athleticism at the defensive end and just going for those rebounds. I miss watching that and playing, especially on the men's side, getting to see someone like Andre Jackson go for those boards the way that Aubrey can do. So that's really been sad to not be able to see any of them play. So yeah, I choose not to answer.
All right.
Wait, I need to butt in that I actually looked at win shares, not win shares per 40, and it does appear that Olivia is second to Paige if you're looking at UConn players only, but she's like 511th in the country. So take that for what you will.
Justification is what I call that.
Alexa, what's Paige in win shares in the country ranking wise?
Well, she's 132, but that's because she hasn't played.
She's been out,
Yeah. Interesting. As we look down this roster, and I think it's been alluded to a little bit, with Paige still out, and with some of the other injuries, and you could say someone who's going to be coming back from injury, hopefully soon, who do you think's the most important player down the stretch for this team if they're going to make a run and get back to looking like more of a vintage UConn team? So, Charlotte, you get the first say on this one.
I think, was it Alexa you mentioned, Kristen? I think she's probably the most important player. We saw what she can do at the end of last season and just her stretch in the tournament and Big East play, or end of Big East play. She really is again, go-getter defender, just like can be put on the opponent's most impressive player, and she can ball hawk and all that. And then just offensively, she can be a scoring threat when those shots are falling. So I think she is a huge piece of what this team needs going forward. So you wonder how the break and the time off will affect her and what we'll be looking at.
Alex, I know you kind of you were the one I was saying alluded to the Kristen answer. Still her? Anyone else in your opinion?
I have a very hot take that.
We're bringing this in the middle.
Yes, I'm gonna just throw it in there right now. My take is that assuming Azzi can come back fairly soon and is healthy and stays healthy, she will end up being the most important player in this team, because I think she's gonna have to take on more of a scoring role and is gonna have to play closer to how she played against USF as long as Paige is out, and as long as Kristen or Ravina are still kind of in these up and down modes. Then Gina's gonna look to Azzi to step up and be the phenom that was promised. And I think she also, if she's healthy, can also show that she's pretty good on the defensive end. So maybe she can impact the game that way. So that's my hot take, that maybe in like February or March, we could be saying that Azzi, maybe she makes a really late push for freshman of the year, because right now she's barely played. She hasn't really had that, her name in the discussion, but I think she'll be crucial as long as she's healthy and she can come back and everything.
Daniel, I'll go to you on this one now.
Yeah, so with Azzi, I'm very interested to see what she can do when she gets back, especially depending on what level of health she's at, because I think that was a big factor with her at the start of the season. We don't really know how much that injury was affecting her. And I don't think it's fair to say that that was 100% of the reason why she wasn't that great earlier in the year, because Gino was even saying how she was playing tentative, and really that's different than being injured. But the big thing with Paige last year was she had to be great because UConn didn't have anyone else that could fill that mantle. Well, we didn't really expect Azzi to have that same opportunity because of Paige, but if she could play like 2 weeks without her or something, I am very interested to see what Azzi can do with that type of role, especially, as Alexa mentioned, with the senior guard struggling. And one thing that I mentioned yesterday on Chasing Perfection, our women's basketball podcast at the blog, is I feel like Kristen might be a player who's potentially best in tournaments, because last year when she turned it on, it was in the Big East tournament. It was in the NCAA tournament. And last year, Grant Wall came out with this really good podcast about Freddie Adu, the soccer phenom. And in that, he mentioned someone mentioned during the podcast how Freddie Adu never really put it together with a club team, but was fantastic with the U.S. national team in tournament formats. just because it was a different mindset. And I think maybe that's not the key, but something that could unlock Kristen where, yeah, I don't really know if she's going to put it together the rest of the regular season, but maybe that switch flips once we get to the NCAA tournament, the Big East tournament. So I think that's maybe a possibility. And if that is the case, they do need someone else to step up in the meantime. I am also really interested, just to name basically everyone available here to make Maggie's answer that much harder, but I am interested to see what Caroline can do with a couple more weeks under her belt, just because the rise she's made the last 3 games has been really impressive. And I think just the more time she can get under her belt is going to be very, very beneficial for her.
All right, Maggie, who's left for you to take here?
Okay, not to sound like a broken record, but I kind of hitting on everyone's points a little bit. They need more people. They need step up. That's what they need. Whether that's coming from the seniors like Kristen and Avina just being consistently better, or bringing in the injured players like Nika, like AZ, Paige eventually. They just need more than one body to be dominant the game. UCLA, it was Avina and Dorka that really stood up and really controlled it. And I think they need to bring that. I don't know if that comes with just having more bodies available, not having 8 players available, having back to double digits again would be really helpful. But I think that's what they need the most. It's just a new sense of reliability.
I know everyone's mind, goes to these injured players and when they might be expected back. What are the latest updates that you guys might have in terms of when we might be able to see some of these players back out on the court? And I'll open it up. Whoever wants to jump on it, feel free.
Well, we haven't talked with Gino since the Louisville game, but based off of what he told Bob Joyce on Monday on the radio show, Nika started to practice or do light work this week, but he didn't have really an update on anyone else. So I would assume that means Nika's closest to coming back. I think it was a little, I don't want to say alarming because that sounds alarmist, but I was surprised that they weren't further along. And I don't know exactly. We haven't talked with them, so we don't know if that means maybe they had COVID. Not they had COVID, but because of the COVID issues, they approached their return differently. We don't know anything about that particularly, but Gino seemed hopeful and confident they'd be able to come back after the holidays. So I was a little surprised that they still weren't ready yet, but I'm hoping maybe, I don't know if that means we could see Nika as early as Sunday or if we're looking a week or 2 from now, but she seems to be the furthest along.
So now looking at Big East play getting underway when the team does resume playing, I think, heading into the season, it was a shoo-in pretty much that UConn would win the Big East. Without Paige, do you all still view UConn as the heavy favorite to win the Big East? And Daniel, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I don't think that's changed really. You look at the way UConn played against Louisville. They were that close. I mean, you could debate how close they were to beating Louisville in that game, but they were still with the number 6, the number 3 team in the country for however long that was. I just don't think anyone in the Big East is really remotely close to that Louisville level. And I think DePaul's probably better than they have been in the past. Marquette will give them a good game. I think Creighton's all right, but even with how shorthanded UConn is, even if they don't start getting these players back, they still should be a cut above the rest of the Big East. I would be really, really surprised if they dropped any of those games, especially in the stretch that they have coming up without Paige. Just for argument's sake, if we say that Paige is back for I think it's February 9th game against Villanova, the only Big East team they have in that stretch that's above 500 is Creighton. And that game on Sunday might not even happen depending on what the COVID situation is. So UConn's not looking good right now, and they're not looking like their usual selves, but they're definitely not at a level where they're going to be dropping games to sub 500 Big East teams. I'd be stunned if that happened.
I think. Charlotte, I was going to go to you next. So
no, I was just going to agree with Daniel. I think taking into consideration those 3, because Georgia Tech aside, which you have to think that was the first game without Paige, and they also had other injury situations. You have to look at that with a huge grain of salt that they were missing all of these players, and it was only a few days after that losing that player. So the preparation time there and the improvements that they made from that to Louisville speaks volumes about what this team can do even without Paige. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. Maggie or Alexa, any thoughts on the team that might give UConn the toughest time in the Big East as they're kind of struggling through some injuries here?
Yeah, I mean, I can go. As someone who, this is their first season covering Big East basketball. Like Daniel said, I think DePaul and Marquette would be their biggest challenges if those are the biggest challenges. But like Charlotte said, this without these 4 players UConn is missing because of injury, it's not like the rest of the players can't play basketball. Like they're still a very dominant team. And so I don't think that I can't pronounce that word today, but that level of the difference between what they are compared to various other Big East teams, it's not going to change that much.
The only thing I'd say is the commonality that this team has demonstrated is that, especially without Paige, they struggle against really good defensive teams. So Louisville and Georgia Tech fall in that category. I haven't watched a ton of Big East basketball, so I'm not sure if any team really reaches that echelon. But at least last year with the personnel they had, like Marquette was a pretty tough, like gritty defensive team. And like that game was a slog, the one where I think they only won by 10. So again, I'm going to say that with the caveat of I have not really like watched Marquette at all, but like I don't see DePaul maybe as much of a problem because DePaul's defense is not a strong suit, but maybe Marquette could pose more of a challenge. I think those are the sorts of teams that UConn's going to lose to, is the teams that are going to really make their offense harder to come by, which has obviously been an issue with none of their true point guards healthy.
Yeah. All right. We'll get to some more of these lightning round questions here and work around the horn here. So Charlotte, you could get the start on this one. What's been the most surprising thing about this UConn team to you in the first half of the year?
I'm gonna have to go fourth quarter. I think just not being able to close it out, especially with having those upperclassmen back, and just having that experience. So I think the fourth quarter for me.
Alexa?
I'd say that Aaliyah Edwards. Aaliyah Edwards has kind of taken a step back from where she left off the season. Again, I think she can find her way back. I'm not really worried long term, but it just is not, besides the Seton Hall game, not the level of aggression we're used to seeing from her. And she can really help this team if she rediscovers that. So I'm really eager to see how she looks coming back from this break.
Daniel?
I'll just say something so it's different, but their free throw shooting has been very weird this year, where some games it's been fine, some games it's been good, and then some games it's been god awful, and there's like no rhyme or reason to it. It's just like beginning of the season it was really bad, it got a little better, it's had its ups and downs since then, so it's just not something that I expected to be a weakness for this team, but it is surprising that they aren't really that consistent with it.
Maggie, you get the last word on this one.
I think for me the most surprising has just been Kristen and her play so far this season. After ending last year in the tournament really, really well and on a kind of a high, and then we saw her beginning of the preseason. She talked about how she really wanted to bring that player of herself into this season. I feel like we haven't really seen that yet, and that's been kind of a surprise to me, is that we haven't seen tournament Kristen since.
We'll go to this one now. We'll throw a little over-under out there. They've lost 3 games so far this year. If I said an over-under of 2.5 losses, you think this team loses, more or less than 3 games there? The rest of the way out. And Maggie, you get it first.
I think they'll lose. Are you asking me if they'll lose another one, or like more than 3? Or
like if I'm giving them 3, the rest of the second half of the season, do they lose another 3 games?
I'll say yes.
Is that including the postseason or just the regular season?
Just the regular. We'll go just regular season.
I'll go under. I think South Carolina is a definite loss unless there's some divine intervention that works its way in there. Then I think they're going to have a tough time at Oregon just with their injuries, Oregon getting healthier, having to go cross country a day after they play. By the time Tennessee comes around, I think they're going to be healthier. I think they're going to be playing better. So I think they'll probably get that one. But outside of those 3 games, I just can't see another even potential loss in there. So I'll go under it too.
All right. Alexa?
I actually think that Tennessee will be more of a challenge than Oregon. So I would agree with taking the under, but with that switch. Again, similar rationale of good defenses being their kryptonite. Wait, no. Is that the right way of using that word?
Yeah, I think so.
Their Achilles heel, basically. Never mind.
Charlotte, your say on this one?
I think it's possible they lose all three. So I don't know. I don't bet a lot, which is probably not a thing. I mean, a good thing, maybe, but not what I want to admit to a bunch of sports writers and dealing with betting. But I think it's possible they can lose all three non-conference, just depending upon injury situations. Tennessee's really good this year. Granted, that is a home game, so that gives UConn an edge. But going on the road to South Carolina is a really tough environment. And South Carolina is just phenomenal this year. And Oregon on the road is going to be tough, I think, especially just coming back, because I really that's a Oregon game is a week and a half away at this point. So just taking that into consideration, I think that's a really, as Daniel alluded to, a really difficult challenge.
I know everyone, this usually isn't much of a question as to what seed that the team will be come March. But if you had to take a guess at seed line come NCAA tournament time, where do you think they end up? And Charlotte, you get first dibs on this one.
I don't know. It's tough. There's such a different team without Paige and just what the record's going to be, because these non-conference games is Gina, I think I'd actually mentioned this to Bob Joyce on the radio last week, just scheduling these non-conference games in the second half of the season versus kind of Christmas break stuff. And will that change going forward with this situation? But I think it's tough. Maybe a 2 or 3. I can't see them being a 1 seed just with the tough challenges they've had to face.
Alexa, you're up.
Yeah, I think, they'd probably be a 3 seed unless they. The issue right now is that they don't have a real quality win. So they need to beat Tennessee to get that, because I don't know. Oregon's now healthy, but they're not even ranked at this point. So Oregon would have to really just kick ass in the Pac-12, I think, for that to count as a quality win. They're not going to probably win against South Carolina. So they really need to beat Tennessee. That would be a huge win. But besides that, their best wins are against USF and Notre Dame, and that's why it hurt them, I thought, the most that they didn't win against Louisville. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're the 3 seed. But, if they end up in Bridgeport, and I don't know how much seeding we're going to, how much it'll really matter.
Yeah.
I think once they get to the tournament, if they're healthy, then it really won't matter a ton. But I could definitely see them being a 3 seed.
Daniel?
Yeah, I agree. Seeding isn't going to matter because they're probably going to be in Bridgeport, and the 1 and 2 seeds in that region are going to be pissed if they are a 3. I don't think they're anything lower than a 3. It's not like the entire country is just on a different level this year. Realistically, UConn's still a top 10 team, even though they're not in the top 10 for the AP poll, but they're in the top 10. I think it depends on how the rest of the way goes. If they can maybe steal the games at Oregon and Tennessee while only losing to South Carolina, then yeah, you're in not great shape, but you're in okay shape the rest of the way. So I think I would also probably guess 3, but I'd be really surprised if it's lower than that, barring the bottom falling out on this team and them dropping games to Creighton or St. John's or Seton Hall, those sorts of things. So I'd say 3 probably.
Maggie?
Yeah, I would also say that 2 to 3 range. They're not the worst team right now. They're not playing really, really ugly basketball. They're still doing UConn stuff. So I think with the injured players coming back, I think they will rebound and they will come back and hopefully build up to where they were before Paige got injured and before all this COVID stuff happened. So I would guess they would fall at the end between that 2 and 3-ish.
I'm getting ready to wrap here, but Daniel, I've got to ask. I saw it come up a couple times in the chat. I know your tweets went pretty viral when you were tweeting out the Muppet Gino dramas. Surprised by any of that?
Surprised that people are losing their minds over something that Gino said. That's just another day in the office. That's, people had just the most obscene overreaction to Gino's joke during the battle for Atlantis that he loves playing by the ocean because if he loses, he can just walk into the ocean and keep on walking. It's been, a month and a half, and people are already mad over another thing he says. So there's probably going to be one more instance in the regular season where he says something funny and people get super offended by it and go over the top. Not to say that there isn't some level of, okay, Gino, maybe you shouldn't have gone that far, but it's still funny. It still should be taken as a joke. Not everything needs to be as serious as people sometimes make it out to be, especially on Twitter. So, yeah, I think I muted those tweets on my notifications. I was tired of Tennessee and South Carolina and Notre Dame fans arguing in circles with UConn fans about who knows what. So, yeah, the moment I hit send on those tweets, I just said goodbye to my Twitter notifications for the next week.
As we get ready to wrap here with this final one, it's everyone's favorite time with the hot take segment. And I kept notes from the preseason one, and Maggie, you nailed yours. I mean, first time doing this, and you predicted a mid-season transfer, and you had it. So I don't know how you follow up nailing one as well as you did, but what's your take for this second half here?
I think I don't know how much I believe this will happen. Probably not. But I would say a hot take would be they have a really, really close Big East game. Or whether that ends in a loss or it ends within a two point difference.
All right. I like it. Daniel?
I don't know if this is so much of a hot take as just a thought, but from the moment Paige went down, I've been saying that UConn's going to be a much better team as a result of her injury, just because from what we saw in the first, 6 games, I think, with Paige, they were so over-reliant on her. The rest of the team wasn't carrying the load. It was Paige and 4 other players on the floor. It wasn't just 5 players at once. So they're definitely going to be better by the time she's back. I think the factor is just going to be if they can reach their ceiling with this group and then plug Paige into it, then yeah, now we're cooking with gas. But if they just make baby steps and are a little bit better and then you need Paige to still bail them out, then I think this team has some serious questions. But I strongly feel like they will be a better team by the time Paige is back.
Alexa, we'll go to you. You were the other one who nailed the preseason hot take. You said they were going to lose 3 regular season games, and you got it by the mid-season panel here. You didn't even have to wait all year, so you cashed that one early.
I might have been underestimating that. My hot take is that they lose in the Elite Eight and that their Final Four streak is broken. I'm just going to leave
that. You stole mine.
I'm afraid of the backlash. That's just a hot take. I'm not sure. I just feel like that could happen, or they could win the title, but that's less likely. I feel like it's either of 2 extremes.
All right, we're keeping the takes hot. Charlotte, you get the last word here.
I was gonna say the Final Four streak was gonna be my really hot take, but Alexa already jumped on that one. What was my hot take from the beginning of the season?
Undefeated regular season.
Oh God, so. That worked well. We'll go. We'll stick on the positive trend on that one, because if I do think, I don't know, it's possible. With it in Minneapolis, they could really just, if Paige comes back with enough time and they're able to get it together, maybe there's a national championship in their future with that Minneapolis home setting. All right. We'll take that hot take.
I like it. I know I said that'd be the last question, but I saw something in the chat here that I do think is interesting, and we could even just do a raise hand on this one. Does everyone think Paige is coming back this season for sure? Would any of you be surprised if she wasn't back?
I'd be more surprised if she doesn't come back than if she does. I mean, I don't know anything, but just from the timeline we've been told, and if she isn't back by the start of the NCAA tournament, that would be, I did the math at some point, I think it's 15 weeks out from the time she had surgery. So if she's not back by that point, the start of the NCAA tournament, then I think something bad has gone wrong in her recovery. I don't think it's just her recovery is taking a long time. She's either had a major setback or re-injured it or something like that. So yeah, I think I'd be pretty surprised if she wasn't back at all, barring something catastrophic.
Is that kind of the general consensus here amongst everyone else? Yeah. All right. We see nodding, so I won't make everyone go around the table on that. We usually like to end with the hot takes, but had to throw that one in there. But Maggie, Daniel, Alexa, Charlotte, really appreciate the time. Fun to get together in the middle of the season, and we'll have to reconnect. I'll bring back the hot take score sheet, and we'll go over those in the postseason panel and see who comes out on top. But appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll all be back out at games pretty soon.
Fingers crossed.
We'll see.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.